Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mervi. I'm the head of machine learning and data at Klaus. I lead the AI efforts in getting AI into the product. I completely froze here, didn't I? So what I want to talk about here today is how to insert this very round cake of data into the triangle of product, engineering, and design. What does it mean to embrace the change? In Klaus, we have done pretty sick things with large language models. We have OpenAI's GPT 3.5 and multiple Google FLAN models incorporated into our production data pipeline. When I say that we have incorporated them, it doesn't mean anything really, right? But we actually have them doing something useful in the product. And how we have achieved that is something that I want to talk about. There was a little bit of an intro. I will add something to that. I'm a physicist by training, and I've done mathematical modeling for decades from very different areas. I've simulated nonlinear wave propagation, how light travels in photonic crystals. This is a medium where light changes where it propagates in. And then I've also done, in a completely, little bit more practical, but in a completely different area of biophysics, how energy production happens, energy production and consumption happens in a heart muscle cell. And because of this background in biophysics, I know how important it is to have a very sound experimental setup, how to deal with very expensive data points, think someone's lives, and why statistics and this having a very good reference base is important also in doing production applications. What does Klaus do? Klaus is a tool for doing quality analysis in contact center. People, contact center leaders, need to know what do their agents do. So they employ Klaus. We ingest all of their help desk data, and they pick very, very small sample of conversations. Think somebody actually going and reads through emails, chats, listening through calls, and then rate the agent's work in specific categories. On average, only 2% of the conversations ever get reviewed. This is what this 2% looks like. So the first mission of Klaus AI is helping people figure out how to pick this 2%. You have to be a really badass data miner to actually do this work very well. So we have employed all of the powers of the stats and the metadata analysis and the NLP to help them pick something meaningful. We have done other things, but this is the first things that we have done. Also, moving on to doing actually the reviews completely automatically. I want to remind you that people have been solving complex problems way before AI and machine learning went mainstreams. Discretization of continuous functions, solving nonlinear functions with numerical models, with methods from 1900s, in the beginning of 1900s. Initial value problems, boundary condition problems, all very complex, have been doing with zero machine learning. So before you do anything super advanced that actually go into to machine learning, try to think, what can I do before? Is there some... Always start with descriptive analytics. Before you employ LLMs, anything clever, start with descriptive analytics. Try to think questions like, is this thing that I'm trying to solve important at all? Is this thing 10 times bigger than the other thing? Should I actually use the power of the LLM to do something? Text always comes with metadata. I say always because I've seen it always comes. And if it doesn't, you can generate it. You can think of like, what is the language, length, simple things like that. Does it have any, like, are all the characters Roman, something like that? And doing analysis on distributions based on these parameter distributions, you can already use this as a map to understand what is the problem space. ChatGPT exploded this winter, and what we did, or we were in a very lucky position that we have developed our machine learning pipelines for 2 years, actually 3 years, and by the time these things exploded, it was mature enough that we could actually employ this in our production pipelines. When this thing was released, what everybody started to do was had summarization buttons. But is it really the most useful thing that you can do to summarize text? It seems that summarization is the new sentiment analysis when it comes to people thinking what you can do with NLP. We try to be a bit more creative. So to sum, I want to urge that start with descriptive analytics. Try to use all of the metadata information beforehand, before doing something very advanced and going into the full-blown semantic analysis. And this is important for the LLMs because this piece can go wrong. They hallucinate, they can produce insane outputs if you give them insane inputs. In drawing parallels to complex problems, solving complex problems. For when it comes to LLMs, prompt is your first initial condition, and what if you feed in some text, this is also it alters what output you can get. So really figure out if you are asking opinions about the text that you feed in that is completely rubbish, and you should know that based on doing a very clever metadata analysis. Crap in and crap out still works, so be sensible. This is all cool, but what does it mean for the organization? What I try to advocate is that doing applied science starts from scientists. Doing applied science in a micro scale is incredibly hard. It's also hard for countries. It's hard for large customers. We try to employ this ethos that the scientist that does the research is best positioned to know how it should also show up in the product. So our data scientists work together with customers in the research. They do product research. They participate in doing product research. They also talk to the UX directly, because like how this thing comes out in the product, like they have the best means to like participate there. So it's much easier to train a data scientist to be a little bit product minded than it is to take a product person and force it to be him or her to be a data scientist. We have 4 PhDs in the team. This level of knowledge and experience is not something you can treat as a knowledge gap that can be filled in 2 weeks or 2 months of webinars. So using these people in the most effective way is what ultimately defines the success or failure of AI products. Another aspect of this is how we have done the engineering and the pipeline building in Klaus. We had a very strong vision from our CTO from the get-go that we don't do like testing and trialing. We don't keep the data scientists in isolation. they can run production pipeline to do the experiments and tests and figure out if it's still worth it and valuable enough to put into like full-blown production. And because of this proximity, we have minimized the gap of data science work to production. Like this implementation time is super small. To give you an example, Klaus ML team started 3 years ago in October, and 2 months later, we had our first prototype out to the customers, meaning that it was actually integrated into our production code, and it was already doing something. We did sentiment analysis in 5 different languages in 5 months. We have right now completely parallel ML pipeline that runs with our in parallel with our regular data ingestion. There are models that or there are setups that calculate statistical models custom for each customer every day and some every week, and this is all incorporated into the application itself. It's not an experiment that sits in the corner and then somebody has to figure out how to implement in the production. We have adopted this way. Actually, I wanted to say something more. 75% of the data science teams don't get anything live in production. And I think this is the reason is that scientists are kept isolation from product and from engineering. Many companies treat data scientists as a vanity. That means that they do their little project and nothing ever gets out live. Obviously, scientists are very ambitious people. If they don't see their outcome live, they leave. So what are we doing here? Klaus don't have this ethos. In Klaus, we don't keep science in drawers. We want to make it live. Thank you. I have quite some time for questions.
Mervi, you can get a prize for being on time with your keynote. This is rare, but you did it. Thank you very much. This means that we will have time for more questions, comments from you, audience. We have our lovely 3 volunteers here with the microphones. Alo there, and Sandra somewhere on top. So please raise your hand and our volunteer will make their way towards you, and you can then direct your questions to Mervi. We have someone in the corner here who has a great question for Mervi. Please go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Thank you, Mervi. It was a great presentation, even if I was staying in the backstage. But one question for you, what is your experience applying these LLMs for marketing things, like for inside the Klaus, if you have any experience? Maybe just elaborate on this.
So how the LLMs end up in marketing is through product. We build LLM applications into the product, and then actually scientists also write the marketing papers because they are better positioned in explaining what it can do. And like you have all read these efficiency gains, better automation, very, very, very vague talks about what machine learning can do and what LLMs can do. This is not useful for anyone to actually articulate well enough what's the benefit and what's the value. We, I don't want to say exploit, but we use scientists for that also. Thank you, Bobor.
Thank you, Bobor. Bobor actually is our next speaker, so something to look forward to. He has a great keynote prepared. But do you have a question? Do we have a question from the audience? I can see a hand. There's someone in a nice, little bit neon jumper, I think. Great.
Hi. So my question is about 3 months to live. without testing? Is it like really clear for users that we haven't tested, we're not sure what's come out from here, it's purely for informational, or how you can ensure that the 3 months July without testing is actually giving value for customers?
Because we tested during these 3 months, like the example I said for the 3 months was a statistical model. So you cannot really argue with output. It doesn't really decide, and that can be right or wrong. Like it's there, it's in the setup, it's just we make it usable. So that was one example where we could go, it was a problem that we have to find complex conversations. And you could go full-blown semantical, trying to figure out what's the definition of complexity in every customer setting, figure out what it means. But that would be something with very bad ROI. What we saw that there's a clear pattern that exists in how many messages, what's the length of messages in tens and tens of different customer data. And because of this pattern, we knew that there exists a pattern, we can exploit it. And basically, we just figured out how to take their atypical cases based on using metadata statistics. It's incredibly robust, it's incredibly scalable, and by nature, if you disagree with it, it's okay. Like it's how we position it in the product didn't make people feel bad that we are like pretentious and we say that okay, this is something and they disagree with it. Like they have an option to do whatever filtering they want or whatever other means of finding these things they want. So yeah, we tested in the research phase, but because of the nature of the problem, it was it didn't need this kind of user testing. We did it before with the user's data. Thank you.
We have time for a few more questions. I see there's already one. Great.
Yeah. Thanks for a great talk. How concerned are you of like data privacy and explainability of your LLM models?
Very. And that's why having the pipeline that lets you clean things very properly before. And if you stumble upon something, like we did a product that revolutionizes, of course, the customer survey asking. And in that, we use the generative power of the large language model. So first is you don't have to use it. Like you really have to figure out if it provides value. Because if you ask it to generate, you have to be bloody sure that if you ask it to generate based on weird thing, you can you can kind of like tune it off. So that's one thing. And then another thing is that our incredibly clever data scientists figured out that there's so many ways you can use it without generating. So you can also force it to be in bounds. We do input. We do input monitoring, like sanity checking. Does it make sense to evaluate this piece of text with a large language model? Probably the output is crap, so we don't do it. We do this pre-filtering, and then also we put guardrails on the output. We can also say that give me the answer in these bounds. So there's like these kinds of means. But this is an excellent point because the large customers have this issue that they have fundamentally said that we do not want anything touching large language models. And then how to figure out, then we can only sell to smaller customers, or we have to figure out that how we can ease their anxieties. So yes, it's a concern.
Are you all warmed up for questions? Because we have time for one more question. Make it good.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for the interesting talk. I have a question regarding, you mentioned about sentimental analysis and how do you differentiate between different contexts different cultures have different contexts. And also, how do you differentiate, or if it's in your roadmap that you focus only on text, or you also include voice and listening to the tonality?
Great. So first question, how do we take into account different cultural contexts? We don't. For the purposes of our application, we don't need to be that refined. Sentiment analysis is used to help people do the data mining. So like, give me all the conversations that had negative. How negative it is, or like, what does it actually mean? It doesn't really matter. So we have kind of like chose the low risk option there. Second point is voice. We are now going in towards voice also, but this is done through the transcription. Like, we do not analyze audio, and we don't plan to analyze like audio for sentiment. Yes, it can be done. There's providers that we could use, but we do it through text.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mervi. Please give a warm applause for an excellent case study.